We just need two more for quorum. We have quorum.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday. It is 6:35 p.m., March 11th. My name is Jason Villanueva. I am Jason Villanueva. I am the chair of the committee, and let's begin the meeting.
I can begin with opening remarks.
Please.
Okay. Until further notice, all meetings of Manhattan Community Board 11 will be conducted by video conference. Links to register to attend the video conferences for each of our respective committee meetings will be published on the meeting's calendar on our website. To avoid crosstalk and help the meeting run effectively, panelists and attendees are asked to keep their microphones on mute when they're not speaking. Those participating by phone can dial *6 to unmute. If you wish to share a question or a comment, you must do so by utilizing the raise hands function. Those participating by phone can dial *9 to raise their hand. Our staff will monitor these requests to ensure that hands are recognized in turn. Questions left in the chat will not be recognized. Board members will be called on first and then attendees. Please keep your questions or comments brief and on topic.
Thank you, Carly. I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 6:36 p.m. And if you can, let's begin with the attendance. Thank you.
Okay. Arroyo? Brooks? Goldblum? Green?
Here.
Malave? Meyer?
Here.
Padilla?
Here.
Santiago?
Here.
Villanueva?
Present.
Wu?
Here.
Okay, we have quorum. And Xavier, you have your hand raised?
Goldblum should be excused. He's still in rehabilitation, so he's not answering his phone that often. But I did connect with him yesterday, the day before, so he's still there.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll note that for the record.
Thank you.
So proceeding with our agenda, I'm going to move us along with the adoption of the agenda. We're bringing them some new practices to make the the Zoom meetings a lot more transparent and fluid and flexible. So if I do not have any objections to the agenda, I will proceed with the meeting. So does anybody have any objections? Thank you. We'll move along. Thank you, Carly. So today, in our effort of, as I've been calling our triple E goal setting practice, we've had the opportunity and the pleasure to have the assemblyman today to speak to us about the budget and how the state budget affects the city budget and how, more importantly, we could collaborate and communicate together. And this is a part of our establishment, education, and engagement efforts. And I really appreciate the assemblyman and his chief of staff for coming out today and having the opportunity to present to us some of the the nitty-gritty work that they do on a day-to-day basis. So I don't know if our presenter is here, Carly. So if we could probably get that going, that'd be great.
Not here yet.
Okay.
So if we want to start,
Yeah, we can move along with the agenda, and then when the assemblyman and all his staff get on board, we definitely can switch over. So the next item on our agenda is the mayor's preliminary budget for fiscal year 2022, review of the city council calendar and the public hearing sessions that are coming up, right? And this ties into our engagement goal, right, with advocacy. And I'm going to turn it over to Carly so we could just start having an idea of the public hearings. In my personal experience, and since I've been to the board, outside of the staff and or public, board members representing themselves as regular constituents, not necessarily representing the board, have not had the opportunity to join these sessions. I know myself, Xavier, have definitely done a lot of research and recon on this in the last few years. And, everything that those of us who are new that have been experiencing led up to these efforts for us to have a discussion today. And those of us that have been on the committee are well aware that we've been looking to explore our efforts outside of our board, right? We know the day-to-day efforts within our district and within our community as a part of the effort with education and meeting with our elected officials. We definitely want to also represent our body, right? So this is a great effort to do so. So, I'll let Carly go through it. Maybe she could share the link in the chat or through an email. And the idea behind it, just to give you an example, and I think Carly would be better to explain it than me, because I was at land use yesterday as an example, and Jessica talked a little bit about what Parks was doing with going to represent something that the entire body agreed upon from that committee through a resolution, and they've drafted that resolution. They're submitting it, from how I understand, as written testimony, and they may even have a person that's going to go there. I'm going to let Carly speak to that, but we used that example yesterday at land use, and it activated an example given of Andrew from our committee, who's also on land uses committee, the opportunity for us to submit to the chair, because it all has to go through the process of, let's get this done as soon as possible within the next week, because it seems that these dates, if not all of them, have already passed. Am I reading this right, Carly?
not all of them have passed.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it'd be better we target the ones that are upcoming, just as an example, and just a simple example that I could speak to. Andrew, land use came up with a new item in talking about the URLIP and the digital divide. It's an example is given every day with our own board members and our constituents who are unable to be a part of this process. And that digital divide has created challenges in communication and more importantly, civil engagement with our constituents. So with that said, the goal is, was to look for more funding through the DCP, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong when I turn it over to Carly and to Andrew, But one of those particular administrative agencies were looking for more funding. The response was they don't have the funding or they're going to use existing resources. We responded to that in the letter of comment to the mayor, which all of you were a part of. Again, more importantly, congratulations for that. That was an excellent effort and driven by all of the board members and this committee. So I really want to congratulate you on yet again giving a successful piece of documentation that summarizes our advocacy efforts. So to just circle back real quick, so Andrews yesterday was told by the chair to come up with something, which I'll work with Andrew on that. To submit to the chair and the staff liaison, which would be Angel Muscane for that committee, to get something to the board chair, so they can authorize us to represent in this. So I'll turn it over to Carly so she can speak a little bit to parks and to the calendar. And then after that, Andrew, if you don't mind, maybe you could share some of what's been spewing in your mind since yesterday with what was directed to us by the land use chair. Thank you.
Okay, sure. I'm sorry. Hold on.
DeAndre.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Good.
I often act
Yeah.
up in my house too. Don't worry.
Yeah, all right. Okay, so I am sharing the calendar right now. So the Parks Committee, if you recall, Councilmember Kalos came and presented to this committee and showed us how to use the calendar and access the documents that are associated with each calendar event. And in doing so, we learned a bit about the sanitation budget and some of the budget discrepancies in the geographic report for the expense budget. So the committee decided to write a resolution on it. And in addition to doing that, Jessica and I actually spoke with the budget team at sanitation, and they did provide some insight about the funding the funding discrepancy and the services, the funding provided to each district is actually directly correlated with the tonnage produced by each district. So we did make sure to make a note of that in the resolution that the committee provided, but still the committee in its resolution asks the Department of Sanitation to detail the difference between like the funding, not like detail what the funding actually is for. So the funding that's on the document is just like a general overview of service delivery. And in the resolution, the committee is asking them to specify, how many dollars is going to garbage collection, just normal household collection, and how much of it is going to street bin servicing and street cleaning, because from the committee's perspective, while it's understandable that funding for garbage collection correlates directly to the waste, just the tonnage per district, we still want to know that doesn't really necessarily, like there's still a huge difference between the streets on East Harlem and the streets in Upper East Side, and we want that spoken to. So that is what the committee produced. And yeah, so some of these meetings did pass, obviously. But there's still a number that are left. And I don't know, Jason, I don't know, do you want me to read them out loud or?
No, we don't need to
Okay.
to bore and drag it out. I appreciate that. I think if we can download this, maybe get it on an Excel file, share it with the committee, and then through conversations over the course of the next few days, we should be able to better address what we can and can't do. I don't think it's something we'll do this evening, but example, like with what you brought up with sanitation, I think that's a great example. Andrew, do you have any thoughts about what you're of what we're possibly going to have to do with land use? I forgot the name of the agency. Forgive me. At this point, I've been looking at the grade report for the MWBE. I recommend that everybody look at that. That was issued by Scott Stringer's office. It just gives you an idea of how many jobs and contracting opportunities actually go to these businesses that the funds is allocated for. But with that said, my mind is FDNY, DOT, NYPD, and all the other acronyms now. So, Andrew, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you.
So another acronym, DCP. So this is our request for training on digital ULERP was addressed to the Department of City Planning. So it looks as though there was a joint committee between the land use and tech committees at the City Council on the 10th. I was not able to attend that. I had work, but I looked online. They do not have detailed minutes up. It's possible that they'll have that or a video up. I'll check back. But there is a land use committee meeting at the council on 3/23. So I am going to try and pop by for that. As for writing some sort of resolution to present, I think that's a fantastic idea. It looks like we do have some time to present in person. The committee meeting is not specific to the budget, to the preliminary budget, but I think I think we can do that. And then if we run into if anything gets in the way of that, I think we can, or we for some reason don't make a deadline, we can always just provide a letter to them, address a letter to them that reflects the board's position. I wanted to ask Carly a question, or you a question, because I'm looking at the FY 2022 budget tracker. And so I'm looking at the digital ULERP one. There's an additional comment now that says DCP is, because initially they were like, I mean, there wasn't much detail. Now it says DCP is currently planning for community board outreach and multiple training options for the new electronic land use application system and digital ULERP process. These resources will be available in the near future. The community board should reach out to DCP Manhattan Borough Office to discuss their training needs and the best training option for the community board. Could someone speak to that?
So are you saying that the tracker itself has an explanation under agency response where it didn't before?
So yeah, I had not. Yeah, that was
Okay.
not before, but on capital expense tracker, agency category description, the agency agrees with these requests, and then additional comment, DCP is currently planning for.
Okay.
Which I do not recall that being from their initial response.
So if that's the case, then that was a mistake on my end where because I know there was a couple requests that didn't, like transferring it over from their Excel sheet, that didn't transfer over correctly. So if there's something there that wasn't there.
Okay. Oh, no, that's cool. But then that means that maybe we should consider sending something to the Manhattan Borough Office as well, and follow up with them to see like what their timeline is. I don't think that precludes us from testifying to the need at land use because we don't have any concrete date set for when we are getting that training or training materials or trainer or money for us to engage in that. Like we don't have that information, so I think we're still well within our rights to testify. But I guess we could also send a letter following up based off of this information. I guess I would want to know in what exact document we could refer to be like, hey, from this document that date. But other than that, I think we could, that would be a good additional thing for us to do on this issue.
I agree. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, what we'll do is we'll tackle it on two fronts. We'll follow up with the MPB's office. Some of you probably already received their leadership training series that they're starting. With that said, I know Carly will speak more to it after the assembly member speaks. And we also have the opportunity for district consultation, which happens over the summer I just want to enlighten everyone. This is a new effort, no different than in previous years. The first year was us just submitting the budget. And then the years to follow, it was responding to the budget. And then as time has progressed, it's been advocating for the budget. So, you know, with that in mind, these are new efforts. These are new, for lack of a better concept, worlds that we're entering into with the intention of solidifying our understanding of this process, and more importantly, to provide the proper advocacy for our constituents. So we'll take everything that was brought to account by Andrew back, and we'll review it, and we'll make sure we come up with a plan prior to that meeting that comes out on March 23rd. So thank you, Andrew and Carly. I'd like to circle back. I see now that Robert's possibly on. Maybe we would like to circle back, give them the space. Robert, I applauded you and your team this as we started. I thank you for sharing your time with us tonight. Again, this is an effort of us, as you're formally aware of, is to collaborate and engage. And I have to say, you have always been a champion for the community, and I appreciate you coming out this evening to share with us, you know, some of the, as I stated earlier, the nitty-gritty work you deal with on that Senate floor.
Thank you, Jason. No, I appreciate it. And I'm glad you guys are doing this. This is, you know, I have to go back to my days as community board chair. And, you know, it would always be tough to get a group of people to actually sit down and actively debate what we want to ask for in terms of budget priorities. So I'm glad that we have such a robust conversation around it. And also, you know, looking into the interplay between the city budget and the state budget, because they're both massive documents where a lot of things can hide. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars, and that not just impact the systems that support our state and our city, but also our community. And I think you all deal with that in the day to day. And you know, I was also impressed at the last meeting when we got our visit from Senator Schumer, because that's where the federal dollars have really, you know, materialized. You know, and I think that's government in action, right? He told you what was going to happen, and then he made it happen. And when that occurs, you know, even if it took us, you know, 8 to 12 months for us to get there, we're there, you know, in terms of a real stimulus package that I think can make a difference. So anyway, long way to say thank you for having me, and I'm glad to talk about the variety of different issues that are impacting us. So I think, you know, I can go jump into the questions or just, you know, take them as they come. But I think one of the big themes or the overarching question is, how is the state budget negotiated? What is the process? What does it mean? How do I represent us there? So kind of the broad overview. I mean, our state budget is roughly $158 billion, with the largest proportion of that being Medicaid and education. And of course, a good portion of that budget being fixed recurring costs. So that's just the general context. But what happens in terms of the actual process annually is the governor is the first to put forward a budget related document roughly in the middle of January. And that's the executive budget. There's a big state of the state presentation of the budget. That's where he identifies his priorities. And this budget in particular, there was shortfalls expected of at least $3 billion in this fiscal year and the next fiscal year. And of course, that was made in a picture in time before we knew what kind of support we may or may not have been getting from the federal government. So that was where we were working. He has 30 days to amend that. And then after that, both houses begin to convene meetings to debate what's in the budget, talk about what they would like to see changed in the budget, and think about what our priorities are going to be in terms of advocating for a budget that reflects the will and the needs of the people that we represent. And oftentimes that's where the tension, I don't want to say conflict, because it shouldn't always be a conflict in the budget making conversation, but there's certainly tension about making sure that the legislative priorities are met. So it is in that those, say, you know, 2 weeks or so that we debate discover, explore the executive budget, review any potential changes, and begin to formulate our, we call that our joint budget resolution. And what we try to do is around this time, so this will be a real-time conversation, we're coming to the point where we're identifying those budget priorities that we want to include in our joint resolution with the Senate that represents at least a collective understanding of where the Senate and the Assembly is in terms of priorities, funding, revenue-related questions, and ways that we should be responding to the executive budget. So I expect that by next week, we're going to be passing in the Assembly, and my counterpart in the Senate will be passing our joint budget resolution, the legislative budget. It's not a budget per se. The only standing budget that exists is the governor's budget, but it's a clear reflection of how we would raise money and spend money related to the budget. And then we have literally 2 weeks to combine, negotiate, put together our respective ideas, visions, conflicts, tensions, mush it into what should be a final executive budget, hopefully with three-way agreements by April 1st. April 1st is our statutorily required end of the fiscal year. We must pass our budget by that point unless we take extraordinary measures to keep funding priorities. But that April 1st is the date when our budget should be passed to be able to ensure fiscal continuity, especially for state and for state workers beyond April 1st. So I think that's a little bit of an overview of the budget process. During that time, there's a lot of discourse, hearings regarding the executive budget. The legislature has hearings on all the different sections of the executive budget, including meetings with different commissioners, public interest groups, community groups, policy think tanks to try and formulate a lot of the conversations that are out there now. I'll take a pause in case there's some questions just on that chunk, because I don't want to go too long without addressing any particular questions. All right, so we'll keep going.
I was gonna say, I'm taking notes. I feel like a kid in school, so please keep going. If anyone else has any questions, so far, again, thank you, Robert, for what you shared. I know I even see some things that are different from then the way that the city operates versus the state.
It's very different. I mean, so in this process, so I like Jason's question. We're going to try and do 2 sets of priorities, because I feel like there's the global priorities, which I think everybody in the Assembly is aligned on trying to meet and address. And those would be the big picture issues like raising revenue, making sure that we deal with residential rent relief, commercial rent relief, foreclosure, moratorium and prevention issues, pandemic related issues. I mean, those are the ones that are front and center in everybody's mind, as being immediate needs that have to be addressed. And then you kind of start putting things into sub buckets of like, okay, which are, broader New York City priorities. So like NYCHA is always, public housing is always one of my key ones. I think we have a good, strong following of folks who are supportive of funding and supporting NYCHA. But we do remember that it's not a statewide issue. There's some public housing upstate, but in a very limited basis. So it doesn't translate completely across the state. Then there's literally everything under the sun. Criminal justice, health, education, that is always the #1 priority, making sure that we are adequately funding our schools. And in this year, it's one of those budget cycles where your head is literally swirling, because you went from contemplating a situation where we were looking at a -$3 billion, shortfall in January, February, and with federal support, we're looking at $6 billion of aid that we're looking to allocate for this year and next year. So, a huge reversal of fortunes in certain respects. And that's just the unrestricted aid. That's not the dedicated specific aid that goes towards education. There's a separate pot of money that goes towards residential rent relief. So there's a lot of things to consider now that provides a very different landscape from what we were thinking about 2 months ago. So we still have to be mindful of those things that are important. Literally backfilling those curtailments or holdbacks. I won't call them cuts, because if we're putting them back, they weren't technically a cut, but we're backfilling the shortfalls that we held back in terms of Medicaid and other funding sources to make them whole for last year, and now trying to make sure that we address some of the important priorities for the upcoming year. So just for Jason on NYCHA in the state budget.
I'm sorry, Robert, just as a matter of formality for our policy, if there's any questions, please let's use the raise hands function so
Okay.
that the person can iterate the question, if you don't mind, Jason. And so if we could just pause for a moment, Carly, if we could recognize those people that ask questions, if you could raise your hand, that'd be great. So that way everything's all following the rules of recording.
Okay, but I'll answer the second part of that question before I go to Jason's NYCHA. So we got the big picture, relief related issues. Let me not forget, in those big picture global priorities, undocumented workers who receive no relief or aid during COVID. That's another important bucket that we're trying to fill, with this budget, and make sure we help some of our neighbors, brothers and sisters who didn't get unemployment, who didn't get any kind of rent relief that was tied to the federal government, but are still massive contributors to our economy and to our communities. So those are just some of the big ones. Some of the smaller ones that I care about that I'm fighting for is a restaurant initiative. It's called I Love New York Restaurants. And trying to build on the executive order that the president passed in February that would allow restaurants to begin to provide meals and meal services for folks who are food insecure. So everybody, all the lines on the food banks that we know about, all the partnerships with New York Common, LSA, all the different institutions that are doing food pantries. We could create this partnership with different restaurants, just like we did at Royal Central Kitchen, and be able to extend that, for longer throughout the pandemic period. And the catch here, which is why we're so excited about it, is that 100% of that funding can be covered by FEMA. So really, that's, we have to just be able as a government and as entities to put the money up front, and that money can be reimbursed by FEMA. So that's why I'm pushing so hard on this to get this into the April budget, because I think we have seen that program work in our communities, and it should be scaled up across the state. Anecdotally, we knew that people were doing things like this. We heard about stories like this in the 5 boroughs. We heard about it in New Rochelle. We heard about some similar programs in Buffalo. So it was happening, but we can definitely be able to do it on a scalable component. So we asked for 25 million for that. I'll let you know how we do. Other ones, condo and co-op tax abatement, trying to take money from folks who don't necessarily need a tax break on their property tax. If you have a condo or a co-op that's worth more than $3 million, you don't need that tax break. We can put it somewhere else. We can put it to NYCHA. We can put it to rent relief programs. We can put it in other places. I guess with that, I will pause and take some questions, but I think that gives you at least a flavor of 2 of the budget priorities that are important, and I'm sure I could give you more.
Thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody who would like to ask any questions from the board first? Sorry, let me do this. I don't see any.
All right.
Jason,
'Cause I read the question.
Jason,
I'll just give
please.
Jason. So Jason wants to know, what are we going to do in the state budget for NYCHA? So to be determined, I'll give you a sneak preview of what I believe we're going to have in our one house budget for NYCHA. And this is keeping in mind that we really, really do believe that Senator Schumer is serious about a large scale infrastructure bill that provides for public housing. So I would definitely qualify this as a down payment because we think he's going to be true to his word on the billions, but we're putting in 750 million for public housing in this budget. And to qualify that, we're requesting that in the one house budget. We still have to negotiate this with the executive by the time we get to April 1st, but that is what we're asking for as an assembly and a Senate.
Thank you, Robert. Jason, do you have any follow-up, or does that close that out for us?
Sorry, can you just say that one more time? What was the amount?
750 million.
Okay. I mean, I'll just say that obviously sounds really low. I know other groups are saying there should be 3 billion. Some people are saying there should be 6 billion. 750 million is obviously really no. I know you are a supporter of NYCHA and you understand the needs in our district, and so I'm not here to belabor the point. I think we all agree that NYCHA needs more, but thank you for answering the question. I'll just also say that I appreciate some of the other points that you indicated, including funding excluded workers, which are a huge part of our community in this district, and they have been marginalized and they have not gotten any relief. And also glad to hear your support also for the various housing tenant relief programs. Are you specifically supporting the housing access voucher program, or are there other programs that you're talking about, or is it just more generally as it kind of negotiates, it'll firm up which bills we're talking about?
I think we're not talking about bills, and I think that's a good distinction. I mean, right now we have $2.3 billion that's allocated for rent relief. And that's, directly provided by stimulus dollars, and it's our prerogative to create a program that specifically addresses those needs. So that's what we're doing now. It's not even necessarily tied to a particular piece of legislation to be able to build the rent relief program that we're looking for. So right now the conversations are, what does that look like? What's required? Is it just an attestation saying that there's significant need? Can it be done by the landlord and the tenant? And right now we're talking about allowing for both to do it with a tenant attestation, and then also talking about how do we prioritize those funds, particularly the folks who are at least initially below 50% of AMI before opening it up to a higher income level, depending on how much need there is in those particular areas. So I think that's where we're focusing on, particularly in terms of the usage of this money, in addition to looking at other ways to supplement that.
Okay, thank you. I have other questions, but I will let my board members go first.
And Jason, I won't ever let you feel bad for pushing for NYCHA. We know that the need is incredible, and I think it's we were slowly bringing the state back to the table, and for folks who don't know, historically the state had been out of supporting public housing since 2015, and we've been chipping away towards getting significant contributions. I think we're close to $1 billion. This would bring us close to $2 billion. So I think we're going to keep pushing that to increase. And I think there's a number of other proposals. I don't want to take up as much time here because they require so much more conversation about the NYCHA blueprint, the way that they're looking to potentially fund public housing using Section 8 dollars, what that means. Is that real? Can that be realized? Is there a better alternative in terms of funding Section 9? So I just raise those things because I think those questions need to be resolved to help identify and clarify what the state need or contribution will be, and what the city contribution and need will be. And I think those conversations are still interwoven.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Jason. That was excellent dialogue. I also know that you're having an event next week that we're definitely going to share with the board and amplify.
Town hall, we're gonna go dig in. We're gonna dig in. What that means.
I was already going to be pushing the committee to tell them it's a mandatory meeting for us to be there. So maybe Jason, if we could talk after the meeting and see how we could join efforts to represent the board and be there in support of your event, Robert. With that said, John, we'll take two more questions and then I think we would like to move the agenda along. We have, I believe, John Green.
Yes, good evening, Assembly Member. Thank you for appearing for our committee tonight. I just have a question. Are the state legislature meetings televised? I know the city council meetings are, but I wanted to know where our state legislature meetings televised.
So we are all of our hearings and proceedings are available on our Assembly website and the Senate website, and also on cable. I wish I could remember the number, but I'm sure it's different in depending on what you have, but there is also an Assembly and a state cable channel.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And Rob and John, when I do the minutes, I'll make sure I put in what that information is, okay? For our district. So thank you. That was a great question, John. If I have no more questions from the board, I see we have one question from the public. Margaret Singleton. Okay. So we don't have colleague, you think we could get her on?
Yeah, hold on. Marguerite, your mic appears to be on, so if you speak, we'll probably be able to hear you. Okay, we don't hear you. I'm not sure if you're speaking.
Yeah, they put in the chat that her mic isn't working. I'll just send your question in writing and we'll make sure to get a response. We're really great at that stuff, I promise. And yeah, Robert, if we can get, I know the flyer went out, so we'll definitely send it out to the other board members. My one question, as always, to our elected officials is, how can we help you to help us to help you?
That's a good question. So, I think one of the best ways, and I can't tell you how appreciative I am of the partnership that we got in terms of the Esplanade and the pier. It was our goal to, really kind of just be a first mover on that, but we knew that we needed the help of the city, to really make this real. And we learned that because we tried a couple different avenues, and the recurring answer was, but it's a city park. I couldn't make it a state park. I couldn't get the state to take it over. Essentially it required, the support of the city. And if it wasn't for the community board really coming out and saying, we're making this one of our number one, district needs priorities and our capital priorities, and getting the support of the council member and particularly Gail on, it would not have been able to materialize in the way that it has. And again, the $9 million or so that I was able to put together was really just a placeholder to say, this is important. It's important to our community, and you lending your voice to that, and being committed to it and helping to bring some of the other community boards, was basically how that was able to get to this point. Not done by any means, but to get to this point where, again, going back full circles to budgets, that these priorities and these important transformative projects are reflected in the budgets of that reflect the values of our community. So it has been consistently in our budget for the last 5 years, and we have to make sure that it's in the June budget for the city for this project to be realized. But it's just that cooperation when we find something that we really need to fill, whether it's the smaller things that we can take on individually, like playgrounds for Thomas Jefferson or something like that, where where we're able to add either state resources or support, things like Randall's Island, we're able to provide, different state level grants around that. It's just about trying to figure out how we can support those ongoing needs that you identify as needs and that I identify as needs, and work collectively towards putting resources towards that. So that's part of, why I'm here, to hear that conversation about what are our priorities and how can I lend the state support to that.
We have one more hand raised. It's Andrew Padilla.
Hey, Robert, first I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to break all that down for our committee. This committee, for the short time I have been here, has been really dedicated to trying to bring in electeds, at various stages of the budget process, the city or state, so they can walk us through it and, see how it is we can be most useful. And so my question was taken by Jason, that my question was going to be, how could we be most useful in this effort? It looks as though that's kind of late on the state budget side. But if there is a way in the next
Wait, not too late.
Okay, so then
this is the
question.
crunch time, right? I mean, I think this is where, this is where the voices, and there's, thank you, Andrew, because that's why we come out and do our town hall around now, is because this is where the voices get elevated to say this is really important. There's a campaign around revenue that's been, beating the drum. We need the campaign around NYCHA to be loud and center. We know that, sometimes the overwhelming need, sometimes distracts from the advocacy component, but we need people just to be out there saying NYCHA is important. We need more money for NYCHA. How much more can we do? Where are we going to be at? Right. So and we also, I think to that point also, we have a lot of different community groups that are advocating on different parts of the budget. For example, 340B, we have healthcare providers where there's, again, one of these wonky issues where you're taking some, federal drug rebate money that goes to clinics, and the state is looking to eliminate that for savings, but that's a big deal for a lot of these clinics. And those are the, the Harlem Uniteds of the world, but also those are some of the FQHCs, which are the Brinkins and the Settlement Healths and the Institute for Family Health. All those guys have potentially a hole in their budget if we move ahead with these changes. So that might be something that I know about, and we may not, and maybe in the budget, but the community is advocating for that, the nonprofit community, because it will and could impact services in our community. So that's just an example. We'll try to give a flavor for as many of those things that are there. And, for those people who really want to dig into the weeds with me, there's a yellow book on the Assembly website that kind of highlights, that's an overview. That's like my, my Bible of sorts for budgeting. It tells us everything, our Ways and Means staff tells us pretty much everything that's been outlined in the thousands of budget pages, and what programs and how they're impacted. And one of my favorites to advocate for is the Neighborhood Preservation Corporations. They do, amongst the many other areas that we look to continue to support and reinforce, they provide nonprofit housing and foreclosure and prevention services, and different housing support to residents of our community. But that's just one of many. So please take a look. There are things to advocate for. One of the things that I'll mention for our education buffs is that in our One House budget, another sneak preview, we are proposing in a separate and apart from the federal stimulus dollars of $9.5 billion, a focused investment into foundation aid, with a plan for a 3-year completion of our investment in the campaign for fiscal equity. So we're going to put in potentially $1.3 billion this year, matching that over the next 2 years to fully pay for the commitment that we know has been overdue on CFE. But that's going to require significant advocacy, right? So I put that on people's radar because that's one of the other things we want folks to be focused on and fighting for between now and April 1st. So just a few things. Your voice matters, social media matters, letters matter, all those things to help us as we make our push until April 1st.
Thank you so much, Robert. And yes, again, we'll definitely be at that town hall because I think that's a great avenue to address some of the concerns that are being raised today and that have been stated. And, just as a course correction from one of the other brothers that shared, we submitted our statement of district needs in October. So it is on record as to the priorities of the district. So if we need to get you that letter, Carly, we can get the letter to comment on the response to the mayor to Robert. I think it would assist in his efforts and in the collaboration. I'm going to attest that I'll be at your meeting next week. And I would love for other board members to join us, especially from this committee. I'll recognize Xavier, and we don't have too much on the agenda. So if we want, then after we recognize Xavier, we could go back to Jason. And again, it's up to you, Assemblyman. We do want to respect your time. And then we could probably give another opportunity to Marguerite to possibly address some of the questions she's bringing up in the chat.
So real quick, thank you, Jason. And thank you, Assemblyman Robert Rodriguez, for being here. I'm going to defer to Jason Wu real quick. And if we can get Marguerite her comm working, and then I'll circle back. I'm actually replying to her in the chat to give her my contact details. So go ahead, please.
Thank you, Xavier. Mr. Wu.
Yeah, thank you. And appreciate the update regarding the foundation aid funding. I would just quickly note that money is long overdue. And so while it's good to hear that it's potentially coming very soon, it is long overdue. I actually wanted to make a comment about the New Deal for CUNY campaign, which Assemblymember Rodriguez, you've probably heard about. Basically, there's two demands. One, there's a New Deal for CUNY legislation sponsored by Senator Gornardis, Assemblymember Reyes, that would enact free tuition starting in fiscal year 2023, and it establishes staff-student ratios, mental health counselors, and other kind of staffing-related issues. And it also is asking for restoration of CUNY funding in the state budget. And so I just wanted to flag that that's something that came up in our Youth and Education Committee. I noticed that both State Senator Brian Benjamin and Jose Serrano, I think, have officially signed on in support of that campaign and those bills. And so I wanted to bring that to your attention. We're working on a letter of support that will hopefully be coming out soon, and which we would certainly send to your office. I don't know if you would like to comment on that campaign right now. Thank you.
Sure. I just got this flagged recently for me this week, and I think some of the numbers sound doable. Marieli will kind of correct me, but I think we were talking about $170 million a year to be able to meet that commitment. So it sounds like a reasonable amount of money to be able to try to find funding for. So I think, that's I think encouraging in many ways. So I know what I will have to look back for is what we are planning to do in terms of higher ed in this upcoming budget. So my notes, I will have that, but I will make sure to have that update in our town hall for sure. But on the quick notes, we know that we have $2.6 billion going to higher ed from stimulus. So I'm sure we are looking to appropriate a number of the gaps around filling for those next 2 years using that $2.6 billion. So I will have some more information for you guys ready in the town hall, but you can count on the $2.6 billion.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Carly, could we try to get Margaret? Forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. If we could try to give you another opportunity.
It appears as though her mic's not working, but
Okay.
Xavier directed her to the Housing Committee, which is the appropriate avenue for her questions.
Okay, perfect. Forgive us, as you could imagine, conducting meetings, I give Robert credit. I can't read and speak, and
well, the trick is I can't keep the chat up because then I get into trouble. You start reading the questions while you're trying to answer one, and that's when it gets tougher.
Yeah. Xavier.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Robert, for being here. We're all making the village better day by day. One of the things, and I did direct Marguerite to email us, we had done a housing forum with collaboration with Cornet a year or two ago, where we removed the veil on affordable housing. And we really, and again, being a parent, we drew it out in crayon so that our 7-year-olds could understand it. Like, oh, that's where all the math lines up. There are two questions I have for you. Is where do you see with incentives that we could use for further development and affordable housing? Do you think that'll be in this budget this year? And then the Second Avenue subway, which I know we've all been start, stop. So
Yeah.
questions and where that is in the budget.
No, those are good questions. I'm going to answer the second one first because I think it's a shorter response. So Second Avenue subway is looking good with the massive infusion of dollars to MTA. The good part about that is we don't see the same level of threat to the capital plan. And I have been on the record, brought this up during a hearing to Pat Foy, is this is our #1 priority. It's critically important to the region and to the city and dealing with our transportation inequity. So he gets it. I think we're going to be moving ahead. As a matter of fact, we just got an update that they are going to begin putting out the contracts, bidding out the contracts for moving the equipment, the underground lines and equipment that need to be moved in order to make room for some of the stations and the ancillary equipment, in addition to beginning to send out public notice regarding the possibility of eminent domain, which is part of the legal process in case they do have to go down that route. So it's moving ahead. And I think the last pieces of those puzzle are, of course, tied to federal approval and New Starts money, which I think will get appropriately addressed in the infrastructure bill. But separate from that, we have enough money to start up the Second Avenue subway. I mean, you folks will remember that we have, I want to say about $2.5 billion in this budget, and then maybe another $1 billion in the previous one to represent the state share of the Second Avenue subway funding, with the federal share being the part that's still in question. So I think that is lining up. And we've obviously lost time. Everybody's lost some time with coronavirus, but things are lining up like we're going to be able to move ahead with that. And then to the previous question regarding housing, one of the things that we did do is we continue to include capital for various levels of supportive housing and affordable housing. I try to be very careful. I think I went through almost this entire period without saying the word affordable housing because it is so subjective when we say that. It's subject to a lot of interpretation, but I think we will have capital, another extension of the housing capital plan for a variety of different income levels, and particularly low income levels in this upcoming budget. So what we are pressing for, which we have not yet gotten, is what is the next 5-year housing capital plan gonna look like? And that's what we're looking for, asking for, and actually introducing legislation that says we should require that to be presented.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
That was an excellent conversation. I don't know if are there any other questions, Carly?
Nope. Doesn't look like it.
With that said, Assemblyman, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge and experience with us. I can definitely speak volumes of how much you educated us tonight, and I greatly appreciate it, and we'll definitely be at your event next week. And again, on behalf of the committee and the board, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
Hey, before you go, Robert and Jason, I just want to chime in. I'd raise my hand back up. I joined the board when Robert was our chair. And I can personally attest to the budgetary evolution we have overseen and made leaps and bounds. So thank you for being here to kind of validate that process and help us on our way to being better. So thank you, everyone.
Great.
Cheers.
Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
All right, good night.
Thank you. Okay, Carly. So yeah, as far as the city council hearings, we'll definitely, we'll get the long or the short of it, we'll get the document downloaded. We'll see what we're gonna do. We already have a pilot with the Parks Committee, and land use. I should say, isn't it open space? Forgive me, I'm so used to just calling it parks. And land use. And this is going to be our pilot effort this year. We're just trying to see how we could be a part of this public hearing process. You've heard from the the assemblyman today that our efforts will try to go next week to the event. We'll send out the, I guess the flyer is what it's called, that we received from the assemblyman's office 2 days ago, where they're gonna, do a town hall on basically a public hearing on the state budget. And it'd be great for those of you who are interested to attend. So yeah, as far as the public hearings are concerned, we'll get the schedule out. We'll see what's left over to look to be involved, and more importantly, we'll circle back at in April to our findings and learnings of being a part of the process, and so that way we can refine for next year. So that will take care of this portion of the agenda.
We have two raised. One,
Yes.
Jason, Andrew.
Yes, Jason.
Hi, so I was just wondering, do we have any of the other state and city elected officials on the schedule to present at our committee? And I asked not only because Assemblymember Rodriguez just presented, but also as we're talking about Community Board 11 presenting at the upcoming budget hearings. That's important, but it's also important for our actual elected officials who are representing our district to also be our voice. And so I'm just wondering, are they scheduled to come meet with us? Have they been invited? Do they need an official invitation? And so what's that looking like?
Well, we met with all the city officials, with the exception of Perkins. We've reached out to him a few times. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten a response or a commitment to date. We were able to get the assemblyman on today. I don't know all the titles personally and positions, but I will say that our effort is relentless. We will reach out to the other elected officials, state and federal, which I'm looking at Congressman Espaillat as our next effort. And again, as stated, this was an education effort. It was just to get us into having these conversations, because this isn't something that's happened in the past. And then hopefully from us building that continuity of communication, we could look towards those collaborative efforts in the forefront. But that shouldn't take away from any advocacy efforts at the grassroots level that any of us are dealing with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the other name that comes to mind is State Senator Serrano, who I think presented 2 years ago before Community Board 11, but I think that was after the budget passed. And so we had talked about trying to get them to come before all of that happened so they can be part of the process.
Yes, he's thank you for putting him on the radar. Yes, Serrano, Benjamin, there's a few elected officials that are responsible for our district that we need to get closed out before June. So we'll keep you updated. Unfortunately, as you can see, even in this case, sometimes we don't get the schedule dotted and crossed until the last moment because of scheduling efforts. But it's been a lot more beneficial with Zoom. So hopefully we could get we'll target Serrano next month. I like that. So that'll be our effort for next month. Carly, if we could get that our notice out to them, I think that would help. Because I do understand that there's concerns in that part of our government with some communications with us, right? I hear a lot where people want to understand where we're at from Serrano's perspective. So it'd be interesting to learn that together. Mr. Padilla.
Yeah, I just wanted to just follow up on well, first off, second, I think we all would like to know together the answer to that question. But then as for the upcoming land use meeting, because the committee is, the land use committee is, de acuerdo, and so are we, and so are the full board as to that being a need. I guess in advance of that, what would be the process if I wanted to present a statement on the part of the community board? Would I just reference our budget document and speak to that? Would I need to just give an outline statement to y'all? Just curious. Or would I just be going as an individual to look, and then
Yeah, it's a little bit
don't
of
want to piss anyone off for you.
no, and I appreciate you for that. First and foremost, as I always say, you guys know this number. You call me, text me, and we'll communicate and we'll work it through. It's an effort. It's a good faith effort. That's what I wanted to be adamant about. Our goal is to put this a part of our calendar, because I'm building a schedule, right? I'm trying my hardest to build with you all a policy and procedure that we can get at play for our next chair. So with that said, what does that mean? This is an effort of us to honestly to figure the process out. I don't have the answers for you tonight as to exactly how we can engage. I do know that land use has taken a position. They've asked it for recourse. They responded to it. So we would put something together, maybe some written testimony. If you want to take a crack at it, we'll send it to Angel, Stephen, and myself. For those who don't know, that's the district manager and the chair of land use. And that effort, I'm going to try to mirror with some of the other liaisons. Example given, one that comes to mind, education, with asking for more funding for SYEP, and maybe what does that advocacy look like? Because I know they also came out with a resolution. And it's not to go full out and have everybody respond to everything this month. This is an effort. So there's going to be a trial. And more importantly, there won't be no grading. So the longer the short of it, we'll be learning together, Andrew. So we'll be in conversation. I know land use has follow-ups on Fridays after the meeting. So hopefully we could try to get on that call if time permits you. If not, maybe we could do something. Again, I don't see time is of the essence because we have at least a week or two. So, we'll hammer out the details in the coming days.
Okay, great. I mean, I figured since everyone was, de acuerdo that this was a need, and, we were all on the same page at the committee and full board level, that it would be more informal like that. I just wanted to confirm.
So just to give you process, and Xavier and Carly could jump in at any moment, whenever we go to represent the board, or speak on behalf of the board, we need to have approval by the executive leadership, in particular the chair. So I would have to notify her. That's why we're making, this is an effort to see what's the interest. I'm not pushing chairs to respond to this. Like next year I will be pushing, because this is an effort. This is the farthest we've ever been in my tenure. And with that said, we're trying to get into that process of engaging and giving people voices in their advocacy, and more importantly, as I'm an advocate and activist, let that passion be channeled at an effective place. And as you heard from the assemblyman today, he wants to hear from us. The formal process is to just get approval from the board chair, but you as an individual, as a public member of the community, as an individual of the community, you always have every right to speak on your behalf at any of these events. I just, I know how it comes. If you're like me, it's hard to separate. So I mix, and though I state manage personally, I mix everything externally. So I like to have that formality of the chair, basically blessing what we're doing, which she's in full support. I brought this up at the executive committee, and there was nothing but kudos and pushed slaps on the back for us for trying to make this effort. Second to that I also think answers a piece of Jason's question from earlier. The council members, because of this effort that we've made over the course of the last 3 months, have asked us to bring our priorities to them, right? Specifically the chairs of the board. And that's been brought up at the executive meeting. So the point, I guess the biggest emphasis is our voice is not going unheard, as you probably heard today. And more importantly, that we're materializing some of these efforts. So I think over the next few months, you guys are going to see a lot of results driven based off the actions that we've taken over the last few months. So I hope that answers everybody's questions. And if are there any more? I'm sorry.
Yes.
I teach on Zoom all day. You think I'd be good on this?
Okay, so Xavier has his hand raised, and then Marguerite has her hand raised again from the attendee section, and I will allow her to speak after Xavier goes.
Please. Yes, Xavier.
Yeah, so real quick, thank you everyone for being on this. When this committee was, and to Robert's comment that how it was to engage in budget, and when this committee, when we had our bylaws revisited and redrafted, and the founding of this committee is one of the two primary standing committees, land use and budget, we always envisioned having liaisons from this committee serving on all. And we originally envisioned, and Jason can tell you, is that we wanted the vice chairs of each of the committees to set on budget. We've evolved and taken a position where you just need people to serve. It's been tough because it is, as was mentioned earlier, very wonky. And it's a lot to consume. And when you do get into the thick of it, it's drinking from a fire hose at the best of times. You are just consuming so much data, so much material, and you have to sift through it. I will say that when it comes into, Andrew, your question, more than pleased to get on the phone, but having been to the hearings and given testimony, there are two ways to go about it, but you do want to consult with the chair to make sure that you're on point and your talking point is exactly as the position of the board is, as it was voted on, because you're then serving as a representative. That's extremely important. There have been times when people have signed up as a board member doing such a job, and there have been times when they've signed up as a community member giving testimony, and you can't conflate the two during the same sitting. So oftentimes people will, not just with us, but all across the city. Yeah, exactly. Both Jason and I have done that, and we were very, he and I, we roll very tight. We cross the T's, dot the I's. We express it slightly differently, but the end game is the same. So you want to make sure that if you are in a situation like this, that you have to sign up for two different speaking points, because you must draw that line. So that's just, and I know everyone on this committee and the board will do that if they so choose, but it's that it's being very definitively clear, so that way there can be no misunderstanding at large. So yeah, I hope that helps. You can always give me a call. Anyone can hit either of us up. And then the final bit, yeah, please, both with the training series and the testimony, cannot impress upon you more than now than ever. It's online. You can do all of this. I remember when we had to go for training series down at the borough president's office. You can get on. You can literally sit there and go through it all. It's a fantastic, and they've really streamlined it. Same with the testimony. They're trying to make it condensed, so we can be engaged. So those were my comments and answering the questions. As always, we stand here ready to serve. And Marguerite, please send me where you are. We don't want to forget anyone. I was out in the field today getting PPE and hand sanitizer and other materials, and just we're going to get there. So just let us know. So yep, please take care.
Thank you, Xavier. Thank you, everyone. Beautiful dialogue as always. We're going a little over, so I would like to move the agenda along at this moment, Carly. That works out great for everyone else. If there's any other questions or concerns on some of the topics of discussions we had, as stated, you have our contact information. Please reach out to myself, Carly, and or Xavier, and we'll definitely assist you on our joint efforts.
Joe, who is in Puerto Rico?
I wish it was me right now.
That's my ringtone.
That makes
Thank
two of
you. And that was a actual recording. So thank you for catching that. That's
That
not a
sounded so real. I was like,
that's
who's
not
out
an
there
auto
right now?
that's not an auto tune. Okay, so review 223-21 City Council hearing on the planning together legislation. I think we dived a lot today. I went through this a lot yesterday, Carly. If we're gonna push this off for next month, if possible, maybe we could get the young lady out to come and present. And if not next, we'll coordinate this item. Forgive me, everyone. I was concerned that we might not had enough data on the agenda, which obviously was the opposite because we're running over. If does anybody have new business, if you leave it to me, we'll be here for another 2 hours. I always have new business. But pretty much just to notify everyone, start gearing up to get ready to, and this is in response to your requests. We've heard you, we're listening, but let's start focusing on next year's fiscal cycle come April. And what does that mean? Let's start having that conversation. I'll speak to executive, to the board chairs. I'll let them know that this year's effort, we're going to try to start drafting the statement of district need and budget requests earlier. So it's not robust or last minute. In particular, my sensitivity is to the new members that are get onboarded over the summer. And they're hitting the ground running come September, and you're becoming a new member, you're getting all involved in this. So the more up to speed the committee is on their requests, the easier it should be on leadership to edify the membership as it gets onboarded, as well as for those of us who get cross-boarded, right? Like me, I've been on youth and education for 5 years, and then this year they put me on land use. So with that said, it just to give you some substance. So that's my new business topic. I don't have any others. I don't see no other hands. Do you have anything, Carly? Mr. Green. I'm sorry. Mr. Green.
No, just a quick announcement. I would like for those of you who do not know, I would like tonight for some of you, for all of us actually, to give a prayer to council member Ben Killos and his family. He lost his mom yesterday, and I would just like for you to know.
Thank you, John. For that, we'll take a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. Prayers to the council member. Please send him our blessings, John. If there's nothing else, I would like to move on. Announcements. You want to hit it, Carly? Because maybe we could get some of this out to the membership in the next day or so.
So I believe that all of the board members should have received that email from the Manhattan Borough President's Office with a list of leadership training. I definitely encourage, and I think all of the staff and all leadership definitely encourages everybody to, like Xavier said, attend these trainings. They're a resource and they're there for understanding. But this one specifically on the 25th is related to the work we do in this committee. There is a workshop called The Importance and Purpose of the District Needs Statement. It's on Thursday, the 25th from 12 to 1 p.m. And while I've talked about the district needs statement here, if you feel like you are still not clear, then I encourage you to register. And that's it. And we have a full board next Tuesday. That's just not on here.
Thank you, Carly. You're the best. I will, as I've always professed and attest to all of you, practice what you preach, right? It's real hard for you to deliberate, debate, and educate if you're not informed. So I would request those of you that have the time and space to be a part of that training. I'll be there. You know, if I say I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. I'll be there at 12 o'clock. I asked those of you, maybe like as in the past, we did a little group chat just to, you know, to ride off our thoughts. I'm gonna scream for this at executive, with advocating for our chairs to attend it. It's more helpful for sometimes for leadership to be up to date on some of the, you know, nitty gritty work we do on a day-to-day basis. So I definitely I'm adamant that our committee, because as you've seen, I love to you know, I just love to promote you guys. Like last year, we had 100% attendance from all our new members at the city planning training. Most of you have already taken budget trainings with the borough president's office, so it's only better that you know, I'm a martial artist, so it's you know, there's nothing better than practicing the basics. And the district's needs statement tends to get neglected every year. Yes, by us. And if it's not being done, it's our fault. So here's an opportunity to educate yourself on how to address that challenge for our community. We gotten better, way better. We got so much better this year with rewriting some of these statements. But the reality is other statements are going on 5 or 10 years of existence. So it's only in our interest to modify, edify it. So then that way, when we advocate for it, you know, that document holds some value, right? Because it's truth, it's not fallible. So I echo Carly's expression for you to be there. If we work together, I'd mandate it. But we're volunteers, so I actually, please, if you have the time for that hour, share it. And you know, the community will appreciate it. So does anybody have any other announcements that they would like to share? I would like to share the announcement of that next week, the assemblyman is having, as it's been brought up all day, all evening. I'm not really going to employ, but those that may have just came on, the assemblyman next week is going to have a town hall discussing the state of the budget, which is a cute way of saying the state budget. And I think it's great for those to learn. I think it's great for those to advocate. And I think it's great for those that would like to collaborate to attend that that event. So if we'll share it, it's probably will be on, you know, Carly said it will go out through the newsletter, maybe on our website. I don't want to commit to that. I don't know the technical process for that. But more importantly, to the membership, I'll make sure you get that flyer as well. I believe the date is March 18th. Give me a second. I know I had it. There we go. It's March 17th, Wednesday from 12 to 1:30 p.m. They'll be doing the discussion via Facebook Live. I'm going to request that they send the link. I'm not the most savvy with all these apps, so I'm going to ask for a link. So if I get it, I'll make sure we give it out. And yeah, we'll get this flyer out to you. Does anybody else have any other announcements? Okay, thank you for sharing your time with us tonight, and the meeting's adjourned. Have a great evening.
Hey, everybody.
Night.
Night.